This week, we will continue in the book of Isaiah as we read chapters 15 through 19, followed by the Salt Shaker devotions written by Jane this week. If you struggle with the chapter reading, please read the devotion for each day. Jane has done an amazing job giving us thought-provoking readings. The leaders in Israel were greedy for gain, as we read in chapter 10. They used unjust laws to support their selfish practices as they robbed the poor and the needy. Assyria was God's tool for punishing Israel, but they failed to recognize it. God had to humble its people and to judge them for their evil deeds. Then finally, in His grace, God saved a remnant and permitted them to return to the land by the end of the chapter. Even in the midst of wrath, God gives His people hope. Assyria would be like a tree cut down at its height and its power, never to rise again. Judah, the royal line of David, would be like a tree chopped down to a stump, but from that stump, a new shoot would grow, the Messiah. He would be greater than the original tree and would bear much fruit. He will bring peace on earth and the glory of God and will cover the earth. Are you praying, Thy kingdom come? Chapter 12 shares a hymn of praise, another graphic description of the people's joy when Jesus Christ comes to reign over the earth. We continue to express prayers, thanking Him, praising Him, and sharing the news of Him to others. Chapter 13 is a message from God through Isaiah concerning Babylon. These messages from God to a prophet are called oracles. Long before Babylon became a power of the world and threatened Judah, Isaiah spoke of its destruction. Babylon was a rallying point of rebellion against God. Isaiah communicated a message of challenge and hope to God's people, telling them not to rely on other nations, but to rely totally on God alone. Verses 6 through 9, the day of the Lord. Verses 10 through 13, cosmic disturbances. Verses 11 through 12, global judgment. Verses 19, Sodom and Gomorrah. And finally, verses 20 through 22, complete and final destruction. In the final chapter read this week, we find that there is more to the fall of Babylon than a deposing of a proud king or the destroying of a great city. Behind the evil Babylonian system was the devil, the enemy of God, the morning star. And finally, at the end of the chapter, the oracle against Assyria and the Philistines. It amazes me how God gives certain people messages He wants relayed to His people. The gift of prophecy. Isaiah had it. And we will continue in his book next week. And remember, Biblical Shakers will make reading the Bible way more enjoyable for you. I pray the Lord will put a hunger on your heart.